Hey everyone, Kitana here and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about Saturn. So if you guys don't know already, Saturn is such an important planet in our birth chart. It has so much influence on our life, and in today's video I'm going to explain what that means for you and what placement you have and how that manifests in your daily life. And of course, Saturn is a very karmic planet, and wherever you have it in your birth chart shows like what kind of karma you have in life. Saturn also represents restrictions, doubts. It also represents a delayed sense of time. And of course, we all know it represents hardships. So if you guys want to find out what that means in your birth chart, keep on watching. If you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you a part of my astro community, so subscribe to my channel. Also, if you want your own personal reading, go to my website, theastrokit.com, and let's just get into these placements. Okay, so let's start with Saturn in the first house. Okay, so Saturn in the first house, now this is a challenging placement. I mean, like, Saturn brings challenges anywhere it is, but Saturn in the first house is especially challenging because first house is the house of identity. And this is kind of like the house of who we are, the house of our own personality. And to have Saturn here, it kind of shows that you sort of restrict your own personality, you restrict your identity. You kind of feel, honestly, you might kind of doubt yourself, especially in your younger years. You really might doubt expressing your truest self. You kind of might be like, I don't want to say, you might have like an ugly duckling phase. Like you might be kind of like the person who like, you might have been the ugly duckling as a kid and then you grow up to be more attractive or whatever, but you definitely kind of lack confidence a little bit too, especially early in life, because you just doubt who you are. That's why this placement is really challenging, because you just have this natural sense of doubt about yourself, but eventually you grow out of it. And I think that's like the karma that Saturn gives you in the first house. It tries to teach you how to accept your truest self, and not only accept your truest self, but express it as well. So that's the lesson you learn early in life, is just kind of not doubting yourself. And I think once you kind of step into your confidence and let go of that doubt, then you're going to be a very confident, very attractive person. But in the beginning of life, it might be challenging for you and you might face restriction with self-confidence. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the second house. Okay, so Saturn in the second house, now this one's really significant because it kind of suggests that second house kind of peeks into our childhood a little bit, and I feel like it shows maybe you came from a household where kind of material possessions or maybe wealth in general or money was very restricted, and that had a huge impact on your like self-worth. Because if you think about second house, it's all about self-worth. It's all about material possessions. I have a video about the houses on my channel. So when you have Saturn here, you kind of doubt your own self-worth. You doubt your values. You doubt, and because of this doubt you have with your self-worth, it kind of affects the amount of money you earn or your material possessions, because you kind of doubt that you're even worth a lot of money. You doubt that you are worth wealth or prosperity. This can be really hard when it comes to earning money. So if you have Saturn in the second house and you've had money issues in your life, this could be why. It's because you really doubt your own ability to achieve wealth. It's not really because of anyone else. It's not because you grew up without it. It's more so you don't see your own value, because Saturn restricts that. And Saturn really gives you doubts when it comes to your own value. And then also, I think Saturn's biggest lesson here is trying to teach you your own self-worth. So in the beginning of your life, Saturn gives you like these challenges of like money issues, this challenge of self-worth issues. And once you learn how to navigate money issues and self-worth and see how it's tied together, then he'll give you rewards later in life, because that's how Saturn works. He gives you rewards after you learn the hard lessons. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the third house. Okay, third house, of course, is the house of communication. It's the house of kind of writing, anything having to do with like logistics. It's naturally the Gemini house. So when you have Saturn here, you might restrict your communication style. You might doubt how you communicate. And in general, with the third house, I kind of get this energy of like creation. I think with third house, you can really see creativity. You can see how you kind of literally physically create things. So when you have Saturn here, you kind of, maybe your creativity is restricted a bit, but more so your communication style is restricted. Like you might have this thing where like you think a lot of things or you have a lot of ideas, but you never express them because you doubt them, because you feel restricted to even express them. And that's the lesson in karma that Saturn really teaches you, is to really express your truest voice, express your truest thoughts, express your creative ideas. But that might be hard for you, especially early in life before your Saturn return, because you feel so restricted restricted and you doubt your own creative thoughts and ideas and communication style, that you might restrict it. And also maybe in childhood too, I can sense like maybe in school you might have been shy, or you might have been that kid that never raised their hand but was really smart, or there's something in childhood where maybe you were taught to restrict your communication a little bit. Third house can really represent your kind of grade school education too. So maybe something happened there where you were taught to restrict yourself. But really that's your lesson to learn, is to like learn this hardship of like restricting yourself so that later in life you can express your fullest self. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the 4th house. Okay, so Saturn in the 4th house, like right away, I think of like growing up in a strict household, because 4th house is all about home, it's about foundations, it's kind of like our childhood, like how we even grew up. It also represents the mother, so maybe you grew up with strict parents or a strict household, so with that, you grow up with this sense of, you know, your foundations feeling restricted, or you feel like home or family for you is kind of restricted, or you doubt your connection with your family, or you doubt your ability to create a family. And in general, I think this kind of suggests too, I think this is a very unique placement, because maybe you have a very karmic tie to your family. I think Saturn represents karma, so maybe something about your family dynamic is very karmic for you, like you have to learn something at home that's kind of a hard lesson to learn in order to function in the real world. Because, I mean, opposite of the 4th house is the 10th house. So maybe you had some very hard childhood lessons you had to learn that were very, I don't know, it like depends on your chart, so maybe comment down below if you have this, but you learned some hard things in childhood, or maybe you had strict parents or that restricted you in some way, and as you transition into adulthood, that you kind of take that with you, and that's the lesson you have to learn. Like I said, you might benefit from Saturn in the 4th after Saturn return, but especially in your younger years, you struggle with some sense of connection to your home and doubting like yourself because of that. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the 5th house. Okay, so Saturn in the 5th house, this right away really indicates that you feel restricted or you doubt yourself when it comes to your own creativity. Because of course, 5th house really represents the sense of creativity, the sense of fun, indulgence, socializing. So with Saturn in the 5th house, this can really put a damper on like your social life maybe, or dating life, because you really restrict yourself when it comes to having fun, expressing your fun side, expressing your creativity. You really restrict that because maybe you doubt your own creative abilities. And this can also point to maybe some awkward social skills, especially early in life, like in your teenage years or 20s. You really doubt this sense, or you really doubt your ability to socialize or even date. So this kind of, like I said, puts this blockage or restriction on your dating life or creative life. And I think the hardest lesson you have to learn is learning how to, indulge in the finer things in life, have fun. I think you restrict your sense of fun with Saturn in the 5th. And you learn that early in life. You learn how to, and really early in life, you learn how to deal with these restrictions and navigate them. And then maybe later in life, you express yourself more when it comes to dating. You express yourself more when it comes to creativity or having fun, or even as it pertains to romance. And I think the biggest karmic lesson Saturn gives you here is to really not just express your creativity, but be confident in it. Be confident in your flirting skills. Be confident in your dating skills. And that's not easy at first, but it does get better, I think, after like your Saturn return. But comment down below and tell me if like you had your Saturn return and and how Saturn functions for you prior to like your Saturn return and then after. So comment down below if you have Saturn in the 5th and you have experience with that. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the 6th house. And of course, 6th house represents your work ethic. It represents your daily routines. It also represents how you kind of behave at work, like your placement within the workplace, if that makes sense. And then of course, it represents health too. So with Saturn in the 6th, I think it could be a good thing just because it does give you quite a bit of work ethic, but I think the extreme thing, like the hardship with this placement, is that you might be a workaholic. Like, I really see this manifesting as you being kind of obsessed with perfection, or I think the negative part of it is like you kind of doubting your work. You doubt your work ethic. You doubt your ability to create something or follow a routine. For example, like if you work at job and career, whatever, and you haven't had your Saturn return yet, you might experience this thing where like you work really hard and you have good work ethic, but you doubt all of the work you do. You doubt all of the projects you create. You doubt everything about it and restrict yourself because of that. And I think Saturn really just wants to develop your work ethic when he's in the 6th house. And I think early in life you might doubt your own work ethic, but I think once you realize your work is really excellent, then you experience the rewards of Saturn after that. Overall, I think this is a really interesting placement. I feel like it's a good placement, even though Saturn is not the best planet to have in any house. Comment down below your experience with this. Tell me like maybe if you had your Saturn return, if it's like different for you. But yeah, tell me how you experience Saturn in the 6th house. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the 7th house. Okay, so Saturn in the 7th house can be challenging. There's a lot going on here, just because 7th house is the house of relationships and partnerships. So this, like, Saturn has a huge influence on your partnerships, your relationships, business deals, even legal deals too. And what I mean by that is that like I said, Saturn is all about restrictions and doubts. So you might restrict yourself when it comes to relationships or doubt your ability to keep one for a long time. A lot of times I see like Libra risings with like 7th house Saturn. So a lot of times you might feel quick to jump in a relationship, but it doesn't last because you kind of restrict yourself when it comes to expressing your truest self in a relationship. And this is another indicator that you might have a partner that is older than you, like somehow or some way, like you always have a partner that's older than you. You might marry someone that's older than you. And this also indicates, like, I don't want to put a damper on anyone's like hopes and dreams, but like it indicates you'll get married later in life. And usually that means like after 30 or maybe even after like 35. Like if you have Saturn in the 7th, I don't suggest getting married before like your Saturn return. Like that screams disaster to me, but like that's just what Saturn does. He really has to give you your lessons early in life. So if you're trying to like fast forward that too much, Saturn is gonna no. Like Saturn is like, no, that's not happening. So I think with Saturn in the 7th, it's good to get married after your like Saturn return, because Saturn has a lot to teach you about relationships early in life, and these lessons are very challenging, and you might go through a lot of relationships that don't work out, but they're mostly meant to be lessons. They're not really meant to be like your love of your life. You know what I mean? So Saturn in the 7th can be challenging, but it does make it worth it in the long run because Saturn really prepared you your entire youth for like the best relationship of your life as you get older. So yeah, comment down below. If it's not too personal, tell me if you like got married before or after your Saturn return and you have Saturn in the 7th house. But yeah, just tell me like the tea down below if you have Saturn in the 7th and you experience this stuff. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the 8th house. Okay, so with 8th house represents so many things. It represents death, debt, mysteries, secrets, also inheritance or taxes. So with Saturn in the 8th, there's like a good part of it and a negative part, but first let me talk about the bad part. I think Saturn in the 8th really restricts this sense of intimacy with others. Like you could be somebody who kind of it can be challenging for you to find a partner. This is kind of similar with Saturn in the 7th, where it's like you have trouble feeling intimate with people because you kind of limit that part of yourself. You put a lot of limitations, like you put a lot of subconscious limitations on yourself when it comes to kind of sex and intimacy and how you relate to others. And really Saturn in the 8th really gives you a lot of spiritual karma. Like you might feel like you have this weird like very strong karma that really impacts your life in a hard way. Comment down below if you feel that way. But it's kind of almost like implicit, like it's not something that's super noticeable, but you have like these weird limitations and fears and blockages throughout your life that feels so karmic, but you can't really explain why. But I do feel like the good part of Saturn in the 8th, especially after your Saturn return, I feel like you might be great with handling other people's money because Saturn is is all about business and money, right? And 8th house is about other people's money, so you might finesse yourself in inheritance. You might be good at handling taxes. You might be in like a job where you like, what is it called? Like you're like you do people's taxes, I don't know. But you might be good at handling other people's money. You might be good at finance or business. So that's a good part of Saturn, especially after your Saturn return. But you might struggle with intimacy and maybe even like karmic issues. And I think Saturn's lesson in this house is to really teach you how to share with others, how to be intimate with others. And you might struggle with that early in life, but later in life it does get better because Saturn is like that. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the ninth house. Okay, so Saturn in the ninth house. So ninth house represents higher education, higher learning. It represents our spiritual values. It also represents travel too. So I think with Saturn in the ninth, especially early in life, you might feel restricted when it comes to maybe, I almost sense like you might be a little bit pessimistic, like you might struggle with optimism, because I feel like ninth house is such an optimistic house. It's about learning things and really just about this sense of expansion. So early in life, especially, you might struggle with your sense of expansion. Like you might be like, I don't know, you might feel limitations when it comes to expanding your horizons, expanding your knowledge. And this also suggests to like maybe in college or like even like maybe high school, you struggled maybe academically, or maybe you struggled kind of finding the right college for you. And this can also manifest as limitations with travel. So maybe you don't really travel that much early in life, but after your Saturn return, you travel a lot. And overall, Saturn in the ninth really reflects like the sense of restriction on your freedom. Ninth house is the Sagittarius house, so maybe your freedom was restricted early in life. Like I said, maybe you didn't really travel, or maybe you didn't expand your horizons enough. And I think that's what Saturn really wants to teach you, is how to, I think Saturn kind of teaches you what life is like without it, so then you learn how to achieve that later in life. So yeah, comment down below if you have Saturn in the ninth and you've ever felt like restrictions in terms of like freedom, or you've doubted your own freedom, or maybe you doubted your ability to earn a certain degree or something like that, or get into a certain college. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the 10th house. Okay, so Saturn in the 10th house can be kind of good because this is the natural house for Saturn, but it still comes with hardship and lessons to learn. So with Saturn in the 10th, you might really experience like restrictions in terms of career. This is something where I feel like how it manifests in your life is like you really have to work hard on your career. You really have to work hard on your reputation. I feel like Saturn isn't going to let you just skate by. It's going to really give you these harder lessons, especially early in life. You might go through ups and downs with your careers. You might doubt what career you even want to do. And I think with this house, Saturn really gives you the karma and tries to teach you the lesson of work ethic. So you might really struggle with that early in life, but if you really like pay attention to Saturn and like learn your lessons, I think it will really reward you later in life. I think the presence of Saturn on the 10th house really gives rewards after Saturn return or after like your 30s. And it does really indicate success to me. Like you'll really be financially successful, but you have to learn these hard lessons when it comes to career first, which is a total drag, but I think it's worth it in the end. So if you have this placement, comment down below and tell me, and then tell me if you've had your Saturn return or if you haven't had it yet. And of course, with Saturn in the 10th, you really do fear failure. So you really have this weird failure, doubt, restriction element going on with your reputation and career. But like I said, you mostly have that early in life, and then after Saturn return, you kind of learn your lessons and then learn how to work hard and work through this fear or failure, or work through this doubt of achievement. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the 11th house. Okay, so Saturn in the 11th house can be challenging. 11th house is all about organizations. It's all about groups, friend groups, social media, social groups. It's about your gains and your hopes and wishes as well. And with this one right away, Saturn in the 11th really indicates you might have trouble making friends. I know that sounds like really bad, but especially when you're younger, you might feel really restricted when it comes to friend groups. Like maybe you're like the one that's always left out, especially like as a kid. And maybe you just doubt your ability to fit in. Like maybe you just never fit in as a kid. Saturn does give like this ugly duckling like syndrome wherever it is in your chart. So maybe as a kid, like I said, you had your doubts, you had restrictions when it comes to making friends. And Saturn here can be negative too, because it kind of restricts your gains in life too. Because maybe like you doubt your own hopes and dreams, you doubt your ability to earn like abundance, because 11th house is kind of like about earning too and gaining. So you doubt your gains, you doubt your ability to make friends, you doubt your ability, you might doubt your own hopes or your own dreams even. And I really think like if you have this placement, Saturn is trying to teach you the lesson of learning how to make friends, I guess, or learning how to, you know, believe in yourself. I think this is all about like belief too, like believing in your hopes, believing in your dreams, no matter how crazy they are. And early in your life, like I said, you doubt that part of yourself, but I think that's on purpose, because after your Saturn return, maybe you're more confident in your beliefs, confident about socializing, confident about being in groups. So yeah, tell me down below if you have this placement, if you feel restricted in any sense of like friendship, or maybe even hopes and gains, and then tell me if you've had your Saturn return, so I know like what's the difference difference between the two. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn in the 12th house. Okay, so Saturn in the 12th house, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, is really one of the most challenging placements. Like, Saturn being in the 12th house is like very uncomfortable and can bring a lot of challenges into your life. And with Saturn in the 12th, naturally you have a lot of subconscious fears. Like, you're kind of like that person who always has like a kind of fearful scenario for everything. And you might have like a lot of nightmares as well. And a lot of the times, this can be connected to your parents, maybe especially your father, because Saturn represents father in your birth chart. So maybe you experienced something like maybe in childhood with your parents where you just felt very fearful. You might have felt abandoned or isolated because of your parents or something like that. And in general, you just carry a lot of subconscious fears, and how this manifests in your life, it just kind of makes you kind of insecure about navigating certain things, because you're just like, I don't know, you just have like these weird fears and doubts kind of like almost about everything. And you might even limit your connection to your subconscious, or you limit your connection to the divine or spiritual universe. I think 12th house is all about like the connection to your subconscious and kind of what's like everything that's intangible, everything we can't see. So sometimes you just feel disconnected from that, or you feel limited from that. Like, you might have trouble meditating, or you might have trouble not having nightmares, or you might have trouble just, you know, quieting your inner anxieties. So yeah, like I said, this is a challenging placement. So comment down below your experience with Saturn in the 12th house. I know a few people with this placement, and it does give them a lot of like internal anxieties. So yeah, comment down below if you had your Saturn return too, so like I know. And then tell me a little bit about this placement and how it manifests in your life. Yeah, if you have Saturn in any of your houses, tell me your experience down below and how it manifests in your life. Saturn does do quite a bit in people's birth charts, so tell me down below. Also tell me if you had your Saturn return yet. I'd love to know your experience. If you want your own reading, go to my website, theastrokits.com, and I'll see you guys in my next video.